You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Ashley Hartgrave, joined by Oliver Camacho and Matt Cummings, and eventually Weston Williams. All right, this week we go inside the huddle with Adam Smith. The British tenor made his Met debut in Madama Butterfly last month and continues his breakout season, starring in the spring run of the Zeffirelli Boheme production beginning this weekend. We've been tipped off that he compares the pressures of being a leading tenor to playing tennis, so brace yourselves for Oliver's gloating. And then it's a field report from the opening night of Saariaho's Innocence. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, the 2027 federal budget proposal will eviscerate the arts, and we're all going to write an open letter. But first, make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. You click follow. On Apple Podcasts, you hit the plus sign. You can also stream episodes of this lovely show every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central at amplisoundsradio.com. You can also email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com, or you can upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, which is operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot take. Gentlemen, I have Oliver Camacho. I have Matthew Cummings. Oliver, where are we in your sports calendar of life?
Do you smell that? That's the smell of the red clay, of the terre battue. It's the start of the clay court season, and right now the Monte Carlo Masters have just begun. So yeah, I'm happy. I like it when it gets dirty.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what do you even say to that?
Yeah, literally nothing. I just cut to you. So you and I haven't been on the same show in a minute. Do we have something we need to talk about?
No, we certainly haven't been on the same show since I got back from New York City to see Princess Leah Michelle, as she was coined as she was so named by Perez Hilton back in the day.
Child, tell me everything. Condensed.
Okay. The new book is terrible. I really hate it so much.
Worse than the original, because that one was bad.
I mean, it is amazing that they manage to quote unquote fix the book every show, and it gets more and more incomprehensible. This one went at great pains to make it like capital R relevant, in a way that I think kind of cheapens the actual like message of the show about like everyone manipulating each other, and it didn't actually manage to make the motivations or the actions like make any more sense. It just made them more literal. But the singing on that stage is just unbelievable. Like Leah Michelle is belting out these pop ballads like she was born to sing them.
Okay.
My other like real main quibble with the book is that they turned Freddie the American from being like a money hungry like person who's obsessed with fame and attention, something that is very real and like actually exists,
and such a trope for us. Yeah.
To someone struggling with bipolar disorder, and since like his actual actions and motivations don't come from that, explaining it with them like to me makes even less sense. And so anytime the Pity the Child theme comes on in like the celesta, he literally gets down into the fetal position and is centered in with a spotlight. And about the third time that happened, my sister and I guffawed to the point where people sitting next to us like look turned over and looked.
Oh, heavens. But I think we can all agree, no matter what, that nobody's side will always indeed be a bop. In fact, the bop.
And you can listen to it starting on Friday when the new cast album gets released. So I have 2 good calls this week.
Didn't Leah Michelle just conclude her run?
She announced that she's leaving in June, so she seems to be holding on just in time for Tony voters to be able to see her.
Okay. There's no way she wouldn't do that. There is no way she wouldn't do that. All right. So, gentlemen, I've got a little bit of sports gossip for you because I love it when things that do not involve me get a little bit messy. Okay. So Major League Baseball, the MLB height reporting system, basically before it was like the honor system, they would literally walk up to baseball players and be like, how tall are you? They would tell you how tall they were. And then that was it. That's just what was reported.
And when have men ever lied about their heights?
Literally never. So it was the stats that were published on websites. They were in all of the different record keeping books. That was just how they did it. This year, everything has changed. So they have introduced robot umpires, which are giving each individual player a personalized strike zone down to the millimeter. So Major League Baseball was like, okay, everybody line up. We got to get accurate measurements on everybody. Over 170 players lost inches. 170 players lost an inch. 48 lost 2 inches. And 6 players lost 3 inches or more.
Which, like, come on, just make it believable.
I mean, seriously. So most of the shrinking was from players who are now listed as either 5'10 or 5'11. So they were listing that they were over 6 feet tall. But
again, go figure.
I know, it never surprises you. So even though they got found out, it's actually now technically an advantage to be shorter in baseball, because that means if you're shorter, then you have a digitally smaller strike zone, which is what makes it harder for pitchers to strike a batter out. So in a nutshell, even though they've lied and they've gotten found out, it is now the era of the short king in Major League Baseball. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
After triumphing as Julien in Charpentier's Louise, the most important opera at the Aix-en-Provence Festival last summer, Adam Smith's 2025-26 season began with his return to the role of Radames in Aida at WNO. And then he made his house debut at Paris Opera as Cavaradossi. Adam's Met debut was just last month as Pinkerton. And this Saturday, he returned to the Met to sing Rodolfo in the Zeffirelli legendary production of La Boheme. And this summer, he'll make his debut at Arena di Verona as Alfredo in La Traviata. Before we dive into this Inside the Huddle with Adam Smith, here's a little bit of his Rodolfo recorded years and years ago when he was just a babe. Maybe I should tell you when this was. This was in 2020, January of 2020. It's hilarious because all I do is talk about tennis on this podcast, and my co-hosts are annoyed with me that like the only sport I follow is tennis. So,
oh, okay. Well, it's a remarkable, because I think it was Renee Fleming that suggested to read many years ago. She suggested that singers read. I've forgotten what the book's called, but it's associated with tennis. Oh, that's terrible. Inside tennis, or like the inner game or something like that. The inner game of tennis, yes, the inner game of tennis, because it's the inner game, especially for a tenor. I mean, even more so for a tenor, I would say, than for any other voice type, especially one of the more romantic, the bigger voice tenors, because it's tough. It's like the full lyric. Mm-hmm. It's, I mean, for anyone really, but it just like, the more unnatural you get in the voice type, mm-hmm. And the rarer the voice type, the more psychological, the more and more psychological it gets. Because all we're doing is sending brain signals to our muscles. And if we send the wrong one, we do the wrong thing. It's as simple as that.
I love that you said that, and I should formally introduce you now to the audience. Welcome to Opera Box Score, Adam Smith. It's great to meet you. I feel like I've known you for a while now because I've been seeing your social media content, and we'll get to your social media a little bit later.
For sure, yeah.
But for those who don't know you and might try to guess what type of singer you are based on your repertoire, I see, some lyric stuff like Rodolfo and Alfredo. And then I see some stuff that's sort of lirico spinto. I would maybe put Pinkerton in that category, maybe not. But definitely Radames is getting more towards the full spinto repertoire. And so, we don't really meet tenors that are already in this Fach. We usually meet tenors when they're doing the lyric repertoire and they gradually, grow into the lirico spinto. And I feel like you might have something in common with your countryman, Freddie Di Tommaso, and that you burst onto the scene with this, quasi-dramatic voice already happening.
Well, Freddie did for sure. Freddie burst onto the scene with already there. I feel like my journey's been a bit like more sort of progressive and sort of slowly building, because we're quite different in age. But yeah, Freddie came on and
he sounds like he ate a lion for breakfast. Yeah.
and crushed it and was and is doing super well and that's great. It's great for opera. It's great to have for people to have people to look up to and look at and enjoy and but also very different singers. Like Freddie and I are both okay. Freddie is, I think he's half Italian but I grew up in England. Grew up with the English culture. As far as I know. I mean, I don't know him super well. I know him obviously a little bit. Really nice guy. And he. But we both grew. But the difference is, I grew up with the northern culture, and he grew up with the southern culture, which is different. It's quite different in the UK. It's different in every country, I think. Just even the way we speak is different, and speaking is so important when you're singing, because the way you speak massively affects how you sing, and your nature about what you are used to. And yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I it is interesting when someone suddenly realizes you exist in the world of opera and then thinks that oh, there's this new tenor on the block, when actually I've been trying for a while.
Well, already in that one response, I think the audience is getting the idea, if they didn't know you already, that you think about these things and you understand your place in the business, and you also talk a lot about technique, and we'll get to that in a moment. But can you please, for our audience that maybe don't know the whole Fach system, how you would categorize your voice type and what it has been and what it's probably going to be?
Well, you might not like the answer because I don't believe in the Fach system. I think the Fach system is a way of putting people in boxes. And in the old days, I mean, I understand, of course, the Fach system has its place in the world, and it's obviously originated in Germany. But the repertoire that I sing is. In the old days, for example, you if you had a big enough voice and a good enough technique, you could sing everything from Nemorino to Otello, and people did. In the same season, in the same few years, you could sing everything like that. And now that's different, and we won't get into that because that's a whole maybe we will later. I don't know, but from my point of view, how I categorize myself, the Fach system, okay, it exists and we can't deny that. However, I try not to label myself because I'm a violinist. I started on the violin when I was 4. And so I will always sing lyrically. I will always sing with the line that I want to produce, because that's the first and foremost what I try and do. I don't always do it successfully, but I try at least. But as the years have gone on, I'm 38 now. As the years have gone on, my voice has developed more edge and more breadth, and it's just got bigger, and so naturally you have to learn to deal with a different beast, a different instrument, a different way of singing, even because when you change repertoire, when you go from singing the Prince in Czech to something like Boheme in Italian, and then the one I just did, Louise in Lyon in French, it really messes with the voice and messes with the technique, because you're singing different vowels and things like that. So I would class myself as someone who can sing many different things. It just depends who wants to actually hear it.
Okay.
So lyrical, okay, but if you really pushed me, all right, sorry, I'll play the game. If you really pushed me, I'll say lyrico spinto.
Okay. Well, that I appreciate your answer personally. I do think for audiences who are trying to understand our craft, they do need these parameters to help them understand what we're even talking about.
You're absolutely right. And forgive me, I'm just very direct.
It's fine. I like it.
I've built up these.
I like it. Don't worry about it.
It's just, I always feel it. I totally agree with you, and fundamentally for an audience, absolutely, to understand what voice might sing what, absolutely. I just think it's interesting that there wasn't the same focus on it
Right. Well,
40 years ago.
In a way, I love that a lot of people will have met you as Pinkerton, which isn't the longest role, but definitely has a lot of, sudden declamatory phrases.
Oh, very much.
Yeah, but also has this lyric stuff that makes it heartbreaking, But if Pinkerton doesn't have that extra gear, it's not as exciting. And so I think where you are right now, perfect for Pinkerton. Of course, I'd love for you to be on stage a little longer, but there are other roles in repertoire. So
I think you said it really correctly before. That was really, really smart, because you said that it is a lyricist into role, and I totally agree with you, because he does need to be able. The orchestra is big, and yes, the conductor can bring it down, but it's not just loud; it's thick. Mm-hmm. The orchestration is thick, and it needs heft, it needs weight in the sound, in my opinion, to be able to sell it appropriately.
Well, we've touched on you've had a big year with the Aix-en-Provence and your Met debut as Pinkerton. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to finally make it into, I'm American, so I'm sorry if I think it's like a big deal, but, to finally have performed at the Met, and how you see the machine being different in America or in the Met specifically versus what you've been doing up till now?
Well, first of all, the Met is just such a well-run ship. It's just a tightly run, well-organized, well-oiled machine, and it's fabulous. It's incredible to walk around and just see all these artists, all these people doing different parts of the arts, and all working together towards this one goal of putting us on stage and making an opera and singing an opera. And I've been fortunate in the last few years to make my debut at the Royal Opera House, and to make my debut in Paris Opera and places like that. And you see it everywhere. And so if you're talking about similarities, I would say the interesting similarities of these companies is that we're all working together towards one great goal of making people emote. Helping people to release emotions, to emote, and working at the Met is it's an extra step forward in so many ways, because it's such a special house to sing in, and the acoustic is glorious. You'd think for a house that size that it would be difficult, but someone deserves a pat on the back for building that place, because they built an amazing acoustic, and the productions, a lot of them they do are just absolutely incredible. Like this one Boheme is just the Butterfly is just stunning production. And really, I had so much fun doing that duet. The reason I do Pinkerton is because of the duet. Mm-hmm. It's really the character is surprisingly difficult because he's on stage for the first hour without a break. So it is actually quite difficult. I find it more difficult than other roles. Because you just don't get that break. So it's about organizing it. But yeah, it's the system in America. I've performed a lot in America, and it's really nurtured me in many ways. And that's why I love it here. And that's why I feel very at home here. Another one of the reasons why I feel very at home here. But I think it's interesting because the Met, everything is just bigger. Everything is done to the nth degree, and it's such a cool. It's just such. I don't want to say it's a privilege, because I don't believe singing is a privilege. I believe we work extremely hard on something, and to try and there are so many sacrifices we make to do what we do, to get with the group of singers that we're doing Boheme with, for example, even that I was doing Pinkerton with, and make this music and then perform it on the stage and see the reaction of the audience at the end. It's just special. I want to work at the Met all the time. I love it.
And have you noticed the audience? What is the reaction of the American audience versus, Paris or Aix-en-Provence or, London?
I think I'd be able to tell you that more after Rodolfo, because the thing about doing Pinkerton is it's not a role where you can get. If we're talking in general, then they love the arts. They love the beautiful, well-sung, artistic productions, the ones that really melt your core, melt your soul, And I think that there's a craving for it. There is a craving for the Metropolitan Opera for what it does, and to have that feeling. And I've lost track of what we're.
Well, you're about to say that Pinkerton's a thankless role because the audience hates you.
And unfortunately, to a certain degree, actually, I was surprised this time that I was expecting them to boo like crazy, and there were a few boos, of course, because the character is the character. And there isn't enough time in the character to have it explained more fully. But it's not a fair representation of how the audience reacts, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Because it's a role loaded with baggage for everyone. Everyone's already decided what they think before they come. But no, it's been. They've loved it. The audience was just electric every night for Butterfly. It was really exhilarating. You go out and you just feel the warmth at the end, and it's great.
You got to sing with Alexandra Korczak, and did you get to do a performance with Eileen Perez?
I did. The first one. I love Eileen. We did Tosca together a few years ago. We had a really, really special time, and she's a really, really wonderful singer.
I think Alexandra Korczak is technically such a. Thrilling, but also how does she do all of these different styles technically so well? And then Eileen is one of these singers that goes to the heart of the music, like that tries to find like the emotion that will crush the audience. She's really good at that.
Very well.
Yeah.
She does it very, very
what is it like singing with two singers with those two different approaches?
The thing is, Puccini kind of gives it to you. So it's not like we can interpret, at least when we sing together. It was interesting. They have the thing I noticed the most is their acting styles were slightly different. And therefore I was able to react in different ways. So if they gave me something different, then I could do something else. And that was exciting. Eileen is just a wonderful person to sing with. And obviously I had less experience with her in Butterfly, but it was interesting the way things progressed with Alexandra, because Alexandra is also a violinist. And we both said the last two performances were both, they were all good, great performances, great. The first time we sang together was really beautiful. That was the broadcast, the radio broadcast, and that was really special. And then I remember the last two performances, there was this, it felt like there was even an extra bit of magic in the air, or just really singing these long lines, and Maestro was with us, and it was just like the three of us with the orchestra, just creating these sensations, this music, and bringing it off the page. And it was really special. We both said afterwards, wow, that was it just felt magic. It just felt really, we're both deep souls. We're both wounded soldiers, I think it's in some ways, but yeah, it was really special and really interesting to work differently, to have those different experiences with the two of them.
Well, you've already told us that you're a violinist, and that maybe explains a little bit more about how you practice. I'm going to say, I don't know if this is like the real Adam Smith or if this is like Adam Smith for Instagram. Either way, it's fine with me. But
you'll only ever get the real Adam Smith.
But, a lot of your content on Instagram is, I think, what we do. Like, we're in the practice room or in our dressing room and working out a phrase, like, is this phrase working today? What do I need to do to adjust this vowel? Like jaw tension, like, all of these things, like the hook, and I just love that your content is so like the real nitty gritty of what it is that we do.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not presentational. It's like very like, how does it sound today? Like, what is
my whole idea with Instagram? I am who I am. I'm just, what you see is what you get. I'm a little bit silly. Actually, I'm very silly. I enjoy being exceptionally immature. But on the other hand, I enjoy making serious art. So, and the life has to be fun. If it's not fun, we shouldn't do it. So, that's my outlook anyway. And so my Instagram was trying to just be a representation of that. I just show just give snippets of what is happening, what we're doing. what I'm doing, I should say, and I don't know, we maybe in the theatre and with other people or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, I just want to show what I'm doing. Maybe it'll be an announcement of something, maybe it'll be some technique stuff, maybe it'll just be, and it's only to try and help people and try and show people that, it's not always cherries and roses, and it can be hard work, very hard work.
Well, we're going to talk more about like your interpretations of certain roles, but like it strikes me that we do this work, and with roles like Rodolfo or Pinkerton or Radames, which you've also done recently at WNO with Jennifer Rowley, right? Was your
idea? I did it. I've done it a few times actually.
That there are so many phrases that are just iconic phrases in these operas.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I hear you practicing them on Instagram. like I recognize exactly where you are, and we work so hard to perfect, one interval or one vowel modification, and I sometimes wonder if that doesn't serve us, if like maybe, I don't know, if the singers, the original singers of these roles or the great singers of the past, like if their techniques were just so ingrained in them and so secure that they could really focus on the whole rather on the micro. And if we risk being fussy, I've never heard you sing, except for the radio of Pinkerton, I've never heard you sing a whole role in person. So I don't know if maybe, when you're on stage, like you are actually just giving us like the complete arc. Or if I would go and hear you and I would hear these things now that I've heard them on Instagram, I was like, oh, here comes that moment that he was working on.
No, I would say if you asked me 10 years ago, you would have done. Yeah, you would have seen the process on the stage. But I think the older you get, the reason we do that in the practice room is so that it becomes muscle memory and you don't have to do it when you're on stage. So of course there will be times when, the number of times I've watched a tenor prepare to sing La Speranza, of course, because it takes a lot of brain power, body power, everything to be able to produce that over an orchestra. So there's always going to be some kind of thought process behind it. But the thing is, you will only see that on a live broadcast. You won't see it in a theatre because you won't be close enough to see it ever. You could be, you just won't unless you're on the stage with me. In that case, I'm watching you as well.
I don't know if it was today or if it was yesterday, but you were reacting to a video of Pavarotti singing. Was it Che gelida manina that he was singing? I think it might have been. It was. Yeah. And I've watched these tenors. I think Giuseppe Giacomini, you just posted like singing.
Yeah, I did. It didn't work because it got cut by copyright for it's really annoying actually.
Yeah. But we look at these singers, these legendary singers, mostly from the 80s when we have the combination of video and audio, and just like what did they do physically, and can we imitate them, and is there benefit in trying to understand what they did,
Well, the interesting thing about that is that you will notice that the majority of the time you look back and you see a lot of these singers, and they are relatively expressionless. The emotion is in the body and in the sound. The emotion is in the sound that they're releasing. But the rest of the day, they don't smile. They don't, they don't look sad or something like that. They're relatively expressionless because the sound is in the emotion is in the sound. Whereas nowadays we're in a much more cinematic world, and everything is HD and on Instagram, and everyone's got a camera. Mm-hmm. And so if you sing a role like that, it's quite possible that someone will tell you that you're not emotionally involved with the role, or you're not in it, or you're not this, that, and the other. So there's a nature nowadays, especially with modern productions, it's a much more engaging process dramatically, and that's really difficult for the singing because it changes the way you sing. Because if your body, in that emotion breeds tightness, breeds tension. Emotion is tension effectively in the body, and of course, as a singer, we don't want tension, or we want just a little bit of tension.
Yeah.
So it's a very fine balance between selling a role, and then also you've got the added annoyance of if you sell something so much and then you actually have to think about a note for a second, you have to think about the approach for a high note, and you switch off, it's really obvious. So when you're just always placid on the face and almost deadpan, you don't notice as much.
That also makes me think of, I probably said this before on the podcast, like Nadine Sierra during the pandemic was great at singing into her laptop and like singing full on, me, and being very believable as like, oh, I'm just on a Zoom with Nadine Sierra and she's she's me, and that really, I think, helped her develop these facial expressions, these, camera acting that made her so compelling as Sonnambula. I don't know if you saw the HD of Sonnambula, but
I didn't. I saw a few clips.
Yeah, but I mean, there's fewer things that are harder than that role, in terms of bel canto, and having to look, whatever, joyful or whatever, betrayed, And
for
she does it so well, and I wonder if that's what makes her such a compelling artist of the 21st century, because of that particular skill set. And if we are,
I mean, also, she's beautiful and she's a good actress, and so it's all the whole thing all together. It all adds to the belief. And when you're singing a romantic, or it's nice to look at, it's in HD, and then it's great singing, and it's expressionful. It's loads of expressions and it's loads of emotion. It's all packed into everything, in my opinion. And we're in a visual world with Instagram and with these other platforms. We're in a very visual world as well as, and it was always audio, because operatic way of singing is so primal. It's so babyish. It's from the technique is generated from a glorified baby cry, and therefore it touches the soul in a different way, because there's not many people in the world that can hear a baby cry and not go look up, because it's nature. We can't avoid it. It's human nature.
Yeah, that noise and the pitch of a baby's cry, you can hear it.
And the emotion behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's so full of emotion.
I think the last thing I want to ask you about is, coming up this summer, you'll be singing Arena di Verona. That's your debut, Arena di Verona.
Yeah.
Have you done this sort of amphitheater outdoor thing yet?
I've done the outdoor thing, but I did it. That was only in Aix-en-Provence. It was outdoor. It would be a very different thing. The arena is the first time I've never done. I have done something, but that was also with microphones. That was when I did my first Tosca in Austin, in the F1 racetrack, because it was during COVID.
Oh, nice.
That was an interesting experience. But no, this is the first time I'm going to be at the arena, and the first time I've performed anywhere like that. So no, I'm very excited.
And how do you prepare for that? And what is the? Do you have a manager that's going to go and sit, in the furthest away and see if they can hear you when you?
Well, I can't say that my problem has ever been volume.
Okay, fair.
And that's not ever really been my problem, volume. And so in that circumstance, quite often I do have a coach that I bring. And it's not to see whether they can hear me so much as to tell me every theatre is different. So every theatre will, some theatres you can turn 45 degrees to the stage, or you can turn 90 degrees into the stage, and you can still hear relatively well out there. So you can play the scene very differently. And some theatres you can't do that.
Yeah.
So some theatres you just have to always be facing out, and you just have to learn. That's where stagecraft comes in.
Yeah.
So stagecraft is always your body is facing this way, and your head is facing out, and your eyes are looking that way. So your body and eyes that way, head out that way. And it's just stagecraft about how singers need to work, and that's the same in the arena. In the arena, the thing about the arena is the myth is that it's actually a really good acoustic, because it works.
Okay.
And so I'm not too worried about that kind of stuff. But no, the answer to your question is yes. I sometimes have a coach come and try, but it's not necessarily the arena because you don't really get much time on stage anyway. So before you sing a show. So
and it's Alfredo in Traviata.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I haven't sung Alfredo for 13 years.
Yeah, it seems like a step backwards if you've sung Radames to go back to Alfredo, you know.
No, it was always done. It was always done like that, you know. Alfredo was always because the thing is, Violetta used to be a full lyric role. Mm-hmm. It's no longer, but Alfredo was also a full lyric role, and so it can be, and it's actually not that high either. That's the thing. That's why it's not a high tenor role. The C that some people do at the end of the cabaletta is not written. Mm-hmm. And actually, I know some lighter tenors that want to cut the cabaletta because it doesn't fit them well. And it's not surprising because it's written for a voice that sits lower. If you look at the first duet, if you look at the aria, if you look at and the last duet, Pari Giocare, it's all in the middle. It's not. It's not in the high stuff. So it's and Radames is just a unique role. It's a role that there is no other role quite like it, really, other than maybe Chenier or something like that. Chenier is the only other role that's sort of similar. But Radames is just so unique, and it's just a technical role. You just have to have technique, and you just have to have obviously a voice that can sing it and a voice that can sound like a warrior in some ways. And you just I don't think too much about it because I doing a role like Alfredo gives me the chance to just sort of soften the voice a little bit and sing long lyric lines. Mm-hmm. Again, it's written in the music. It's not something. The voice adapts to the music. The music is there, and we have to bring it off the page. But I can totally see that nowadays it seems a bit of a strange choice. But to me, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while because it's every role teaches you something different.
Right. Well, we started this conversation talking a little bit about Fach busting, and I think actually,
sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. Throughout the conversation, I do think that it's clear that you are a full lyric plus, lirico spinto, just based on the way you talk about your own voice and the roles that you're singing and the history of these roles. So I would venture to say you're not going to sing Mozart. You're not going to sing Monteverdi,
No, it's just not necessary. I mean, my voice can do others. Everyone has their talents, and Mozart is not something I could ever be have a specialty in because, for example, I think it comes from the violin because I always played romantic music more, late 19th century music, and therefore my soul is late 19th century musician in that sense, and therefore all the things that I sing are sort of late 19th century, early 20th century, kind of the Puccini stuff, and the middle of the 19th century as well, but nothing really before that because there are so many other people in the world that can do that way better than I would be able to ever do it, and so I don't. There's so much repertoire that I wouldn't want to mix it up again because I sing also multiple different languages. I think I sing in like 5 or 6 different languages. So it's not, I don't want to add another factor to the equation because it's already hard enough.
Yeah. Is there a way we can bring it to sports where like once you've played certain sports, you don't go back to whatever, table tennis?
Well, I think it's interesting because in tennis, I don't know whether you can go that far, but I think in tennis in general, there are levels of progression that you go through, and the end, and they all have different tactics involved in them. They're all, so singles will have a tactic. Singles at the Masters tournaments will have a certain tactic because they're only best of 3, and then at the Grand Slams it will be best of 5. So the Grand Slams are like the big houses, the big American houses, or the big American and big European houses like, the Paris Opera, the Royal Opera House and places like that. And then, to sustain throughout the year, you do the Masters tournaments, you go to the still amazing houses, but the ones that are slightly less well known. I mean, fundamentally. And you learn, those are the houses where you learn your trade. You hopefully learn the most in those places in order to, so that when you go to the big places, like you go from the Masters tournaments to the Grand Slams, you can go there and you can do well, and you could even win. It's not the same because it's not completely the same because it's not objective, it's subjective. But absolutely, I always come back to this idea that singing is like tennis because we're on our own, and yes, we might be part of a team, but we're still responsible only for ourselves. And if we mess up, it's on us. And that's the responsibility that we hold, and that's why the pressure is so high, just like it is in tennis.
A little bit of Adam Smith's Radames from Opera de Rouen from 2024. Adam Smith stars in La Boheme beginning this Saturday, April 11th through May 2nd, with Angel Blue as Mimi, friend of the show in Law, Amina Edris as Musetta, conducted by friend of the show, Roberto Kalb. And you guys haven't heard the interview because it was just recorded, but one of the things we talk about is Adam's Instagram. He does a lot of inside the practice room, just like working out phrases, and he also does great reaction videos to, great singers of the past. Do you have any favorite singers that you can rely on for practice room content or reaction video content?
I think we've talked about it on the show before. I'm pretty sure it's been a good call for at least me, if not also both of you. Mm-hmm. But Catherine Lewick posts fascinating practice videos on her feed that I always love checking out.
Agreed. And I think it's such an interesting time that we're in, that we now have so much more access to these folks that are at the top of their games as they do this. Because, as I was going through my training back in the 1760s, we were definitely encouraged to listen to singers. And part of it was so that we could get their technique. How we were going to get it from the audio recording, I have no idea. But it's funny because they were like the Marilyn horn trumpet mouths. And so we got these demonstrations of that. Turns out, Mama's voice doesn't really work too much with that whole trumpet mouth technique, but Marilyn Horne did it. So I was like, I clearly have to do this. Absolutely not, friends. That is not how things work for me. But yeah, I love that we're kind of in this different era, because I was very much a singer. I mean, I am a singer, but at the time when I was learning, I was a mimic. That was really kind of how I figured out how to do stuff, was I would listen to people and then literally use that to like do an impression of what they were doing. And that's how I learned to be an opera singer. I would have loved to have been a young buck in this new digital era with that sort of stuff. But you're right. Catherine Lewick is, she's a superhero in so many ways, but she is legitimately one of my favorite follows. I also like Rachel Will Sorensen. I like what's her name? Brunette. We talk about her all the time. It's escaping me, but yeah.
Sula Parisiris.
I like Sula's a hootin' too. But even Luki Meacham, when he every now and then decides to post a little content about that sort of stuff. He's a goofball, and I've known him for far too long in a very different era of his life, but it's always very charming to see him get in there and just try to really unpack the craft.
And I will add Cecilia Molinari, our new friend of the show, who does really intelligent dressing room stuff, rehearsal room stuff, and talks about technique and talks about the body. And I found out, maybe incorrectly, that she's a doctor, or that she had a medical degree, or she's very, very smart.
Was she just talking about playing Despina, or...
No, she was our Dorabella in the lyric opera Così. But I heard from somebody that she actually has like advanced degrees, and I'm not sure if it's in medicine or whatnot, but I think her intelligence really does come through. I'm sorry, Matt, you were about to say I interrupted you.
Oh, I was going to say that I also, my feed when the new Ragtime recording came out was full of videos of Joshua Henry trying to figure out his placement on the longest notes you've ever heard. And having seen it live, I can confirm that resonance was there. That man did not need a microphone to fill that house.
One last one, which is not necessarily a current social media video on technique, but absolutely a masterclass. It's a little bit of a foreshadowing to what my good call is, but there's been a reason that the musical The Wiz has been kind of circling around in my orbit as of late. And one of the videos that will never leave my soul is a very young Whitney Houston in 1983 singing Home
on the Merv Griffin
show. Yes. Everything about that is, this is how you sing. This is how you sing. The ease, the comfort, I don't know if everybody can throw their head back with such joy and make that sort of no one can, but it's always that beautiful reminder of like, this should be fun. It's work, but it should be fun, and it can be beautiful fun. So yeah, that one always kind of lives with me.
Pass or fail? Here's Monday Evening Quarterback.
Innocence, the final opera by the late Finnish composer and OBS Hall of Famer Kaija Saariaho, opened Monday, April 6th, or yesterday for us, which is why our best Weston could not join us for the podcast panel. As we record this, he is still recovering from having been almost raptured. It was his debut at the Met as an audience member, and we could not be happier for him that he got to hear what is being described as one of the most important works of our time.
That was great. I love this opera. I was thinking about how Kaija Saariaho's work is generally so based in the mystical, the supernatural, because that sort of ethereal sound that she creates in the orchestra, very sonorous, very based on the individual overtones of each instrument sort of intersecting and coalescing and building on each other, really lends itself to a kind of Die Frau Neuschatern sort of story. But this is a flesh and blood tale, and somehow she managed to pull it off. So this is an opera about a school shooting, but it takes place 10 years after the shooting has actually occurred. It is all about the survivors trying to deal with the ramifications on a personal level as to what they've just been through. I don't want to spoil the entire thing because I know we have listeners in New York City who will want to go in kind of cold, but suffice it to say the main drama is mostly about a wedding where the bride, played by Jacqueline Stucker, is getting married to her new husband, Miles Mikkonen, and there is a deep, dark secret that has not been revealed to Jacqueline. And the fact is that the brother of the groom was, in fact, this school shooter at this international school. And that unravels at their wedding day. And it's very dramatic. It sounds almost melodramatic as I say it out loud, but it really feels very grounded in a way I wasn't expecting. The entire set is 2 floors of the school and sort of the banquet hall and kitchen of this wedding venue. And it's a giant cube that sort of spins around and at various points reveals, what's happening in the modern day and during the day of the wedding and what happened 10 years ago. It's not necessarily, there is blood and gore, but it's not graphic in that you don't see it happen. You more see the aftermath and sort of a almost choreographed reenactment of it. In a lot of ways, it's almost more harrowing because of that. And throughout, each singer or speaker, there are several speakers in this cast, are speaking in multiple different languages because, again, this is an international school. This happened at. Joyce DiDonato was scene stealer as the waitress, who is the mother of one of the children who was killed during the shooting, who happens to be working the wedding that night. And as you can imagine, that is not ideal for the the happy couple. Stephen Milling as the priest doesn't have too much to sing about. He really only has two big moments, but he has a very profound bass voice. He sings in Finnish, which is always nice to hear. A lot of what Kaija Saariaho's previous operas were translated into French rather than Finnish, so that kind of gives her a more international reach. But this is one where she could really indulge in writing, occasionally even in Finnish. This is an opera that really emphasizes the human drama of it all. There are lots of, as I said, spoken parts. The part of the school teacher, I think, was a real highlight. She's almost speaking in this Sprechstimme, Sprechgesang kind of style where everything is highly enunciated and it's almost sung but not quite, and it really gives a almost Schoenbergian kind of Mondestrunken kind of vibe to it. It's a lot of really, really good music. This is a hard orchestral score. It's a pretty hard sing, I think, for everybody just because of some extended technique that happens. The folk singer, pop singer that I mentioned earlier before the opera, Vilma Ja, she plays the ghost, essentially, of one of the children who's been shot. So Saariaho is taking advantage of the amplified nature of her voice and the different style outside of the classical realm to give her this ethereal quality that goes through the opera and sort of provides this sort of haunting counterpoint to the flesh and blood drama that's going on. It is worth seeing if you're in New York City. It's worth seeing if you're not in New York City but can get here. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, if you're listening to the show, you know my proclivities for modern and contemporary opera. It's not that weird musically. It is very, very heavy. And if you are mentally prepared for heavy, I think you're going to love this piece. It is a work that feels very contemporary and important in the sense that, school shootings are unfortunately a reality we live with here in the U.S. especially. But in a lot of ways, it feels a little bit more universal than that. The fact that this is at an international school rather than a U.S. school gives it a very different flavor than a lot of other artistic depictions of school shootings that I've seen. And I'm still kind of like sitting with it and trying to work out what that really means thematically, but certainly emotionally, I'm in no doubt. This is a great work of art, and man, what a final piece to go out on. I said to my wife as I was coming out of the opera that, this piece really makes my heart hurt that we're not going to hear any more operas by her because, man, what a way to go out. But that's my report. I'll see you guys next week when I will be on the show in person, live and in the flesh. Until then, signing off.
So we have no idea what that field report's going to sound like because Weston is adding it in post, but we assume that he's very happy and maybe a little tired from, I think he drove to New York. So he's probably just got home.
Couldn't risk the security lines taking him away from Kaija.
Yeah. But I've been hearing a lot about this opera, and I have other friends who are very excited about it. And my insider friend at the Met was showing pictures of the lines for the opening night. I'm not sure if they're going to have lines like that all the time, but big turnout for the Prima. And I was getting a little bit excited about it for having heard Joyce DiDonato, friend of the show, Joyce DiDonato, talk about her role in the opera. I think it's the lead role. From the
she's playing Innocence.
Yeah, she is the so-called Innocence. Yeah, Lady Innocence. She was interviewed as part of the Met radio broadcast from last Saturday. I hope you all enjoy that and that Weston encouraged you to go from his field report. And it'll be the Met radio broadcast on the 18th. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Opera America is warning that the administration's FY27 budget proposal, released last week, includes significant and concerning, though not surprising, changes to federal cultural funding. It includes $29 million to carry out the closure of the National Endowment for the Arts, $38 million to carry out the closure of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and $6 million to carry out the closure of the Institute of Museum and Library Services.
The proposal also introduces a $2 billion Make Education Great Again, or MEGA, block grant program, which would consolidate and replace 17 existing K-12 programs, including arts education, that together received $6.5 billion in fiscal year 26 funding. That represents a nearly 70% reduction, with only a portion of the funds guaranteed for literacy and math, and no dedicated funding for the arts.
These cuts are proposed alongside a $1.5 trillion defense budget, which is a 40% increase, and a $73 billion in reductions across domestic agencies. Importantly, this is a proposal, not a final budget. Congress now begins the appropriations process, otherwise known as FIGHT, and advocacy matters. But Auntie Ashley is here to tell you what you can do. First and foremost, you're going to contact your members of Congress and share how federal arts funding impacts your individual communities. Next, you're going to partner with peer organizations and amplify their messages. And finally, you're going to stay informed. You're going to be ready to engage as this process moves forward.
Friends of the show, Opera Philadelphia, has launched a new partnership with Temple University to produce new opera recordings while offering Temple students hands-on experience through rehearsals, masterclasses, performance opportunities, and arts administration. The collaboration has already begun with recordings planned for Complications Ensue and Sleepers Awake, part of Opera Philadelphia's current season, to be released by BCM&D Records.
In major awards news, Rolando Villazon has won the €10,000 Rheingau Music Prize for 2026. The citation for the award said, quote, "With humor, charisma, and infectious joy of life, he captivates people of all ages, makes classical music accessible to all, and thus acts as an outstanding ambassador who sustainably carries this art into the future."
And the Ford's Theater Society has named Grammy Award-winning conductor Leonard Slatkin a Lincoln Medal recipient, selected for his 6-decade career advocating for America's musical heritage, accessibility, and education. Currently serving as music director of the Nashville Symphony, Slatkin conducted last summer's production of A Midsummer Night's Dream at friend of the show Opera Theater of St. Louis.
In trade news, the Staatsoper Hanover has announced the appointment of Francesco Angelico as its new general music director, and Mark Skorka, president emeritus of Opera America, has joined the board of the post-KC Washington National Opera. The Salzburg Festival has appointed Karin Bergman as its interim intendantin for the 2026-27 festival seasons. In Korea, Park Hae-jin, former director of Seoul Metropolitan Opera, has been appointed as the 15th director and artistic director of the National Opera of Korea. And cellist and conductor Han-na Chang has been named as the new and first female president of the Seoul Arts Center.
Exit stage right, Petro Primak, a soloist of the National Opera in Ukraine, died at age 57. An honored artist and teacher, Primak had been with the National Opera since 1993 after graduating from the Kyiv Conservatory. Over a 30-year career, Primak performed internationally and also taught voice at the National Music Academy of Ukraine.
And on this day, April 9th, a few firsts for you. 1836, today was the first performance of Auber's Les Chaperons Blancs in Paris. 1939, singer Marian Anderson performs for 75,000 in a crowd at the Lincoln Memorial. She was sponsored by First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt and all of those protesting the Daughters of the American Revolution. Why? They would not let Anderson sing at the DAR Constitution Hall in D.C. And on this day in 1948, it was the first performance of Samuel Barber's Knoxville, summer of 1915, with soprano Eleanor Staber in Boston.
Birthdays on this day include the Italian soprano assoluta Giuditta Pasta, born this day in 1798. In 1846, it was the birth of Italian composer Francesco Paolo Tosti. In 1887, American composer Florence Price was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. In 1888, Czech baritone Hilbert Vavra was born in Prague. Among his teachers were his father, Antonin Vavra, and the great Matteo Battistini, and among his pupils, the great Yarmila Novotny. In 1898, American bass, social justice warrior, football player, and actor Paul Robeson was born. Austrian tenor Julius Patzak was born in Vienna on this day in 1898. In 1906, it was the birth of Hungarian-American conductor Antal Dorati, born in Budapest. In 1910, Italian mezzo-soprano Cleo Elmo was born. In 1915, German tenor Rudolf Schock was born. In 1943, the late Italian bass baritone Claudius Desderi was born. And happy birthday to Scottish tenor Harry Nicol, born this day, April 9th, in 1952.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
It has become the time of evening when people sit on their porches, rocking gently and talking gently, and watching the street and the standing up into the sphere of possession of the trees, of birds hung havens, hangers.
A lovely clip of Eleanor Staber in the oldest extant recording that we could find this evening of Knoxville Summer 1915, just 2 years after it premiered. That performance is from 1950 with William Strickland leading the Dumbarton Oaks Orchestra.
You can hear our episode on Knoxville Summer of 1915 in our SoundCloud feed. I'll put the link on the show notes for this episode on operaboxscore.com. Some podcast aggregators archives go back to 2021. I'm not sure if yours does. I'm not sure even if Apple Podcasts or Spotify do. So yeah, look for it on SoundCloud. That was when we were part of a certain Southern American state's opera network on the internet.
Who? I don't remember that time.
When everybody was doing video content for podcast formats. So
yes, you can technically call what we did video content.
That's what we'll call it. Speaking of calling, guess what everybody needs to do? Call their congresspeople. So all our acronyms at the federal level that celebrate and support the arts don't effing die. Holy wow.
Yeah. As we're recording this, we just heard about the brokered ceasefire between Iran and
generously brokered.
Yeah.
Again, that's what we'll call it. Yeah.
There are lots of things that are holding our attention right now, and it's very stressful. But when the dust clears, it would be great if we had some libraries and some museums and some science.
Yes, somewhere to put all those new opera recordings, which apparently are only coming out of the Met as long as it survives and Opera Philadelphia. So,
which, you know what, shout out to them. And I also appreciate that there's a lot of good stuff happening in Philly with them, with Boyer at Temple. They have kind of picked up the mantle performing arts wise in the education space now that University of the Arts is no longer there. So again, thank you for somebody making some opera recordings somewhere. Why don't we wrap the show up?
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. It's how we wrap this show up each week. We will begin with Oliver Camacho.
I saw this Instagram post that I really liked. I think it might come from a rival opera podcast called
What? No, there aren't any. It's
Juicy
just us.
Interludes podcast. Anyway, the post is on Instagram, so we don't have to listen to the podcast to enjoy it. And it's called the Met GM Fantasy Shortlist, sort of handicapping who would be a great candidate to replace Peter Gelb. We'll link to the Instagram post on the show notes at operaboxscore.com, but they propose Dominique Meyer from Vienna State Opera and La Scala, Corey Dastur from Houston Grand Opera, Alexander Neef, currently at Paris Opera, and the New York Philharmonic's Deborah Borda. And I like the way it's like a carousel post, and each, image has like the kind of the super title, not the super title, the copy.
Caption. There it is. There you go.
So I'm so good at talking the caption as to what each candidate brings to the table, and it's a really fun post. And maybe one of them will end up being the next GM at the Met. Who knows? But find that post when you go to operaboxscore.com.
Matt Cummings.
Another podcast trying to come for our crown as America's talk radio show about opera. It's none other than New York Times' The Daily, which did just put out over the weekend a fascinating episode with Zachary Wolf of the New York Times to discuss in detail both his article that Weston and I unpacked a couple weeks ago about friend of the show, Lisa Davidson, her journey to motherhood and all of the complicated emotions and situations that process took her through. Fascinating article. If you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out. Listen to Zachary Wolf talk about it. Listen to Lisa Davidson sing in the background of that interview. And yeah, we'll link it here.
I just want to say about that podcast, The Daily, that it published on Easter Sunday, and it really did feel like an Easter gift. Like it was a miracle to have that podcast.
You get home from singing the last verse of your hymn, and you have
yeah. But there's some cynicism about, was the Met pushing Lisa Davidson out for that PR opportunity with New York Times to promote Tristan and Isolde, which did not need any PR help, but it was timed pretty well to promote the Tristan. But you can't be cynical about it when you hear how sincere Lisa Davidson is in the audio of that interview. You can read it and say, yeah, her PR team told her to say those things. But when you hear her talk about her, personal life and her struggles, like it really does cut to the heart. It was really, really a beautiful piece.
Yeah, that's such an interesting thing to talk about, that intersection with opera singing and artistry and motherhood and how those journeys can inform and affect each other. Wow. I wonder if there is another podcast about opera that did a pretty extensive series of interviews with opera singers and conductors about how their journey to motherhood had affected their artistry, 6 years ago exactly right now.
Unfortunately, we'll never know.
Maybe I'm just streaming it up. Maybe I'm just streaming that up. Hey, I got the fabulous opportunity to see the national tour of the new production of The Wiz this weekend. And the reason I'm bringing it up, besides the fact that it's awesome, is that the costumes were done none other than by opera costume designer extraordinaire and the gentleman who created all of the magic that was Fire Shut Up in My Bones, Paul Tazwell, who has gotten every imaginable award since then. They are absolutely stunning. I mean, the piece, the updates that they put in The Wiz are mostly awesome. The direction is great. The performers are incredible. But really, the costumes are the thing that drive all of the action and the interest and keep you just super, super engaged in the production. They do an incredible thing with the Yellow Brick Road. I won't spoil it for you. So if that national tour of The Wiz is coming through your area, it is absolutely worth your time for those visuals. That is it for this week's edition of America's Top Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get your voice heard and find links to stuff that we've talked about at our website, which is, again, operaboxscore.com. That is also where you can put your money where our mouths are. You can give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Your audio editor is Weston Williams. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Matt Cummings with guest Adam Smith, I am Ashley Hardgrave, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you ask your senators to do their effing jobs. We're back with an all-new show next week when countertenor Randall Scotting takes a free throw on his new album Divine Impresario, for real this time. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more infectious joy of life. Join us.